There are sins against power that no court will judge, no law will punish, and no moral teacher will warn you about. They happen in silence, behind smiles, wrapped in loyalty's disguise. But the moment you allow them, the second you show weakness to these calculated betrayals, you're signing your own death warrant. What I'm about to reveal will shatter every naive belief about loyalty and trust. Because these aren't just mistakes, they're unforgivable behaviors that Machiavelli identified as the silent killers of authority. This isn't philosophy for the weak-hearted. This isn't advice for those who want comfortable lies. This is the brutal anatomy of how power dies, not from external wars, but from internal rot. Because the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones declaring war on you. They're the ones sitting at your own table, drinking your wine, and planning your downfall. Today we dissect 8 behaviors that must never be tolerated. 8 acts of betrayal, so poisonous they can destroy decades of work in moments. If you're building something that matters, if people depend on your decisions, if you refuse to be another casualty of misplaced trust, then watch until the end. Because sometimes survival isn't about being stronger. It's about recognizing what should never be forgiven. 1. Abandonment in your darkest hour. Machiavelli didn't measure loyalty by years of service or grand gestures. He measured it by one thing: who remains when the world turns against you. Because anyone can stand beside a winner, but only the truly loyal will stand beside the fallen. You know them well, the ones who celebrate your victories as if they created them, who laugh at your jokes as if they're comedy gold, who promise eternal support when the sun is shining. But watch what happens when you stumble. Watch how quickly their phones stop ringing, how their schedules suddenly fill up, how their loyalty evaporates like morning mist. They don't even have the decency to betray you openly. They just disappear. No confrontation, no explanation, just the deafening silence of abandonment when you needed them most. And then, when you somehow survive, when you claw your way back, they return with hollow excuses wrapped in fake concern. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. I had my own problems. I thought you'd understand. The most dangerous betrayal isn't the knife in the back. It's the helping hand that vanishes when you reach for it. Don't believe their reasons. Absence during crisis isn't coincidence. It's choice. And that choice reveals everything about their character. When you forgive this abandonment, you're not showing mercy. You're teaching everyone around you that loyalty is optional, that support is conditional, that you can be left to die without consequences. Machiavelli knew this. One person who stands with you in the storm is worth more than 100 who flee when the first clouds gather. Because loyalty-tested crisis is the only loyalty that matters. Everything else is just performance. Remember their faces when you called and no one answered. Remember who disappeared when the attacks came. And if you survive, when you survive, never let them back into positions of trust. Because the person who abandons you once will do it again, and next time, they might not just disappear, they might join the attack. A throne built on the loyalty of the crowd is just a chair waiting for someone else to sit. 2. Fear disguised as wisdom. Nothing destroys an empire faster than placing a coward in command. You might think enemies pose the greatest threat, that conspiracies lurk in every shadow. But Machiavelli understood the real danger: a leader too afraid to lead. Fear doesn't always shake hands or stutter words. It often masquerades as prudence, as careful consideration, as moral restraint. But look closer. It's the paralysis that grips. When decisions must be made, the endless committees formed to avoid responsibility, the hesitation that turns critical moments into missed opportunities. When those beneath you see their leader constantly seeking approval, second-guessing every choice, waiting for consensus on matters that demand swift action, they stop believing in the chain of command. Doubt spreads like infection, starting at the top and rotting everything below. An army doesn't fear the enemy. It fears a general who doesn't know when to attack. Picture yourself in battle, looking to your commander for direction and seeing him frozen by indecision while the enemy advances. Would you still follow, or would you start planning your own escape? That's how fear spreads, from leader to follower, until the entire structure collapses under the weight of collective doubt. True leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to act when answers are incomplete. The market doesn't wait for perfect information. Competition doesn't pause for moral reflection. Your enemies don't hesitate while you debate ethics. Some leaders hide behind morality to mask their fear of action. They speak of compassion, of taking time to consider all perspectives, of the need for consensus. But strip away the noble words, and you'll find someone terrified of making the hard choices that leadership demands. Power belongs not to those who wait for certainty, but to those bold enough to act despite uncertainty. If you want to keep your position, learn to decide quickly and explain later. Never let fear disguise itself as wisdom, because people may tolerate a harsh leader, but they will abandon a weak one. The sweetest poison comes wrapped in praise, delivered by those who call themselves your greatest supporters. 3. Manipulation through praise. There exists a particular breed of person who never disagrees with you. They applaud every decision, praise every word, validate every thought, and they represent the most insidious threat to your judgment you'll ever encounter. Machiavelli feared the flatterer more than the enemy, because enemies keep you sharp while flatterers make you dull. They don't serve your interests. They serve their own proximity to power. They don't tell you what you need to hear. They tell you what keeps them in your favor. Flattery is intellectual poison. It doesn't kill instantly. It slowly erodes your ability to think clearly, to assess situations accurately, to recognize your own mistakes. You become addicted to the validation, dependent on the praise, blind to the reality that you're surrounded by mirrors reflecting only what you want to see. True loyalty sometimes sounds like disagreement. Fake loyalty always sounds like applause. Real allies will risk your displeasure to protect your interests. They'll tell you when you're wrong, challenge your assumptions, push back against dangerous decisions. But flatterers create an echo chamber where every bad idea sounds brilliant. Every mistake goes unchallenged. Every warning gets drowned out by artificial approval. Watch how they behave when you stop providing opportunities. Notice how their enthusiasm dims when your influence wanes. Observe how quickly they pivot to praising your replacement when your power shifts. They were never loyal to you. They were loyal to what you could give them. Machiavelli warned, "The flatterer will lead your funeral procession with the same sweet smile they used to praise you." When your power crumbles, these professional validators will seamlessly transfer their allegiance to whoever takes your place, using the same techniques that once fooled you. True strength means being comfortable with uncomfortable truths. Seek advisors who will challenge you, not those who will comfort you. Because the leader who only hears what he wants to hear will eventually face what he never saw coming. When someone challenges your authority in public, they're not questioning your decision. They're auditioning for your job. 4. Open defiance of your command. Authority exists in the minds of those who witness it. Power isn't maintained by force alone. It survives on the belief that the person in charge cannot be challenged without consequences. One public act of defiance left unpunished, can shatter that illusion forever. The challenge doesn't need to succeed to damage you. It only needs to plant a seed of doubt in other minds. If he can speak out, why can't I? One mocking comment in a meeting, one dismissive gesture in front of the team, one public questioning of your judgment, and suddenly everyone is watching to see how you respond. They're not just observing your reaction to the challenger. They're measuring your strength, calculating your resolve, deciding whether you're still worth following, or if it's time to start hedging their bets. Every second you hesitate, every moment you let slide, every excuse you make for not responding sends the same message: I can be challenged safely. Public defiance spreads like wildfire because it provides a template for others. The first person to challenge you successfully creates a pathway for every other ambitious subordinate waiting in the wings. They don't see your tolerance as strength. They see it as opportunity. Some will disguise their rebellion as constructive criticism, claiming they only want to improve the organization, insisting they're not against you personally. They just think things could be better. Don't be deceived. Anyone who publicly places their judgment above your authority is quietly declaring themselves a better alternative. The crowd's silence doesn't mean agreement. It means they're waiting to see who wins. They're not listening to the words being exchanged. They're watching the power dynamic unfold. They're deciding which side looks stronger, which leader appears more decisive, which authority seems more legitimate. You don't need to crush every dissenting opinion or punish private disagreements. But public challenges to your authority must be addressed swiftly and definitively. Not because of ego, but because every eye is measuring your response and drawing conclusions about your fitness to lead. Remember, you're not just defending your decision. You're defending the principle that decisions are yours to make. Lose that, and you lose everything. The person you save today might be the one who destroys you tomorrow, not because they hate you, but because they never valued what you gave. 5. Thanklessness after generosity. In the deadly game of power, your enemy isn't always the one who opposes you from the start. Sometimes it's the one you lifted up, the one you believed in, the one you saved from destruction with your own resources and influence. They become the knife that finds your back because they never truly valued the hand that pulled them from the depths. Ingratitude isn't just forgetting a favor. It's a declaration that your sacrifice meant nothing, that your trust was naive, that your generosity was wasted. The ungrateful don't just forget your help. They convince themselves they never needed it, that they would have succeeded anyway, that you were merely convenient rather than crucial. When your position weakens, the ungrateful feel no obligation to stand by you. They see loyalty as a transaction that ended when you stopped providing benefits. Worse, they'll use their intimate knowledge of your methods, your weaknesses, your blind spots, to align themselves with your enemies, whispering, "I was close to him. I know exactly where he's vulnerable." Gratitude cannot be demanded, but ingratitude must never be rewarded. The truly dangerous aspect of the ungrateful is their sense of entitlement. In their minds, they deserved everything you gave them. Your help wasn't generosity, it was obligation. Your investment wasn't kindness, it was what any reasonable person would have done. They rewrite history to cast themselves as the hero of their own success story, with you playing a minor supporting role at best. Watch how they react when you stop giving. The grateful remain connected, checking on your welfare, offering what they can in return. The ungrateful grow cold, distant, irritated that the benefits have ended. They don't see you as a person who helped them. They see you as a resource that has run dry. Machiavelli understood. Mercy is a tool for building alliances, but only when given to those capable of reciprocal loyalty. Given to the wrong person, mercy becomes a weapon they'll eventually turn against you because they know your weakness for helping others. The test of true character isn't how someone acts when they need you. It's how they behave when they think they don't. The person who forgets your help in times of plenty will be the first to attack you in times of scarcity. Never invest in those who take without gratitude, use without acknowledgement, and consume without reciprocation. Because when you fall, they won't just abandon you, they'll justify their betrayal by claiming you never did enough. Talent without loyalty is like a sword without a handle, impressive until it cuts the one who wields it. 6. Ambition unbound by honor. Ambition drives progress, fuels innovation, and transforms ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. But when ambition exists without loyalty, without honor, without any binding principle beyond self-interest, it becomes the most dangerous force in any organization. The ambitious without honor serve only themselves. They may perform brilliantly, speak eloquently, and please every faction. But their neutrality is strategic, their competence is calculating, and their loyalty is conditional. They don't want to serve power. They want to replace it. These individuals are masters of positioning. They never openly rebel, never directly challenge, never show their true intentions. Instead, they watch, learn, and wait. They study your patterns, catalog your mistakes, identify your vulnerabilities, all while maintaining the perfect facade of dedicated service. You'll recognize them by their careful neutrality in conflicts, their reluctance to take strong positions, their talent for being indispensable without being committed. They excel at making themselves valuable while keeping their options open, contributing enough to stay relevant without ever fully investing in your success. When crisis comes, when your position becomes uncertain, when others are choosing sides, these ambitious opportunists disappear into the shadows. They don't flee like cowards. They calculate. They assess which way the wind is blowing and position themselves accordingly, ready to emerge as the solution to problems they may have helped create. The truly insidious aspect of unbounded ambition is its patience. These people don't need to destroy you quickly. They can wait years, decades, even for the right moment. They'll serve faithfully as long as it serves their ultimate goal of replacement, building their own network, their own influence, their own power base within your domain. Ask yourself about the talented people around you. Would this person still stand with me if I lost my power? If the answer is uncertain, if you sense their loyalty is contingent on your strength, then you're not looking at an ally. You're looking at a successor who hasn't made their move yet. Machiavelli's advice was clear. Bind ambitious people to your destiny through mutual interest, shared risk, or controlled fear. If you cannot guarantee their loyalty through these means, never let them grow strong enough to threaten you. When someone uses virtue as a weapon against you, they're not fighting for justice. They're campaigning for your position. 7. Righteousness as a political tool. Some people never raise their voices, never draw swords, never openly declare war. Yet they can topple the mightiest leaders using the most insidious weapon of all, moral superiority. They don't attack your actions. They attack your character. They don't challenge your power. They question your right to hold it. This is warfare through righteousness, conquest through compassion, revolution wrapped in the language of reform. They position themselves as the moral alternative to your practical leadership, the virtuous choice for people tired of hard decisions and difficult realities. The morally weaponized don't want debate. They want judgment. They create impossible standards, then condemn you for failing to meet them. They speak of transparency while operating in shadows, of justice while pursuing personal advancement, of service while seeking power. Watch their tactics. They never attack you directly on competence or results. Instead, they question your motives, your methods, your character. They ask seemingly innocent questions designed to plant doubt. Is this really the kind of leader we want? Don't we deserve someone more compassionate, more ethical, more in touch with our values? These moral manipulators understand that modern audiences prefer leaders who make them feel good over leaders who get results. So they offer emotional satisfaction instead of practical solutions, inspiring rhetoric instead of difficult truths, moral comfort instead of effective action. The trap is perfectly designed. If you respond to their attacks, you appear defensive, guilty, lacking in the very virtues they claim to represent. If you ignore them, their accusations gain credibility through silence. Either way, you're forced to defend your right to lead rather than simply leading. True morality is usually quiet, personal, focused on results rather than recognition. It advises in private, corrects through direct communication, and measures success by outcomes rather than applause. But weaponized morality always needs an audience, always seeks validation, always requires someone to condemn. When you see someone mounting moral challenges to your authority in public forums, understand what's really happening. They're not trying to make you better. They're trying to make themselves your replacement. And if you don't address this performance decisively, you'll find your throne has become their stage. The cruelest betrayal comes not from enemies, but from those you trusted with your secrets. 8. Treachery through privileged knowledge. The eighth and perhaps most devastating behavior that must never be tolerated is the betrayal of confidential trust. This goes beyond simple disloyalty. It's the weaponization of intimate knowledge against the very person who shared it. Every leader must confide in someone. Every person in power needs advisors, confidants, inner circle members who understand the full complexity of decisions and situations. But when these trusted individuals take the secrets you shared in good faith and use them as ammunition against you, they commit the ultimate breach of honor. This betrayal is particularly devastating because it comes from those closest to you, those who understood your reasoning, witnessed your struggles, and knew the pressures you faced. They don't just attack your decisions. They attack you with your own words, your own doubts, your own private moments of uncertainty. The person who knows your fears is the one most capable of making them reality. The treacherous confidant is more dangerous than any external enemy because they possess what no outsider ever could: the full context of your decision-making process. They know why you chose one path over another, what factors you considered, what alternatives you rejected, and what concerns kept you awake at night. When they turn against you, they don't just share information, they share interpretation. They don't just reveal what you said, they explain what you meant, what you were thinking, what you were planning. They become the narrator of your private story, and they're not interested in accuracy, they're interested in damage. This form of betrayal often emerges gradually. It starts with small indiscretions, little comments that seem harmless, but test boundaries. He mentioned he was concerned about, or between us, he seemed uncertain about. Each breach prepares the ground for larger violations of trust. The most sophisticated practitioners of this treachery don't dump everything at once. They portion out revelations strategically, timing each disclosure for maximum impact. They understand that information is most powerful when it arrives at the moment of greatest vulnerability. Machiavelli would have recognized this immediately. Never share more than necessary with anyone, even those you trust most. Create compartments of knowledge. Never let one person hold enough secrets to destroy you completely. And when someone violates confidential trust, even in small ways, remove them immediately and completely. Because the person who betrays your trust with small secrets is preparing to betray you with large ones. The advisor who gossips about your concerns is rehearsing for the day they'll testify against your character. The confidant who shares your doubts is building a case for your replacement. Trust must be earned continuously, not granted permanently. And when it's broken, it can never be fully repaired, only replaced with surveillance. Conclusion: the price of tolerance. We've dissected 8 behaviors that no leader can afford to tolerate. Each represents a different form of poison, a unique way that power dies not from external attack, but from internal rot. The common thread binding them all is this: they exploit the very qualities that make leadership possible: trust, generosity, openness, mercy, and transform them into weapons of destruction. The leader who forgives everything will lose everything, not to enemies, but to those he refused to see as threats. Machiavelli's genius wasn't in advocating cruelty. It was in demanding clarity. He understood that power relationships require boundaries, that leadership demands consequences, that authority without enforcement is merely a suggestion. When you tolerate these 8 behaviors, you're not showing strength through mercy, you're advertising weakness through naivety. The moment you forgive abandonment, you teach everyone that loyalty is optional. When you excuse cowardice, you signal that leadership is negotiable. By accepting flattery, you blind yourself to reality. Through tolerating public defiance, you invite others to test your resolve. In overlooking ingratitude, you reward betrayal. By ignoring unbounded ambition, you nurture your replacement. Through accepting moral manipulation, you legitimate emotional blackmail. And by forgiving treachery, you guarantee its repetition. True power isn't built on being liked, it's built on being respected. And respect comes not from kindness alone, but from the understanding that certain lines cannot be crossed without consequences. The leader who draws no lines will find himself surrounded not by loyal allies, but by calculating opportunists measuring his weakness and planning their advantage. Watch closely. Learn the difference between genuine loyalty and performance loyalty. Act swiftly when boundaries are crossed, so you don't have to act harshly later. And never confuse tolerance with wisdom. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your organization is to remove the cancer before it spreads. If this analysis opened your eyes to behaviors you've been overlooking, if you recognized people in your life who fit these descriptions, if you're ready to stop being naive about human nature and start protecting what you've built, then smash that like button and subscribe for more unfiltered truth about power, leadership, and survival in a world that never stops testing your resolve. Share this with anyone who needs to understand why nice leaders often finish last. Not because the world is unfair, but because they never learned what should never be forgiven. The choice is yours. Remain comfortable with comforting lies, or embrace the uncomfortable truths that separate survivors from casualties in the game of power. Your future depends on which you choose.